room's half empty now. I'll make sure it's fully empty by the time I'm done. I once again find myself staring at the lights, and I cannot see how many of you are. So if you're in the back and you want to leave, you can. I won't know. I find myself quite anxious for the first time giving a talk, mostly because I'm sober for doing this, but also because I have turned 36 today, and I found out yesterday that I will be 43 by the time the consensus layer gets upgraded. So I'm having a bit of an Ethereum midlife crisis. This is not a technical talk. It's kind of the amuse-bouche between some really interesting stuff on ZK and everything else. This is more of it's a culture talk. Are we the baddies? Like, what have we created? Should we be aware of things coming down the pipe? And I'm not the only one who helps contribute to this, which is good because these two are both more intelligent than me. Josh Cincinnati, the president of the Interchain Foundation, and Paul Dillon Ennis. I think one's watching and the other one's asleep. Hi, everyone. Thanks for your help. And so I've been watching some talks. I've been walking around. I've been speaking to people. Devcon's, it's my first Devcon, and it's been really exciting to kind of like watch the energy and like what people are working on. It's probably going to get a little bit frothy in all of crypto for the next couple of months or like 4 years. We have no idea yet. And so I think it behooves us to maybe just caution ourselves a bit and go like, we spent so long, like 10 years, getting to where we are now. We finally have like the Biddle fund. We finally have like PayPal, and every other company are launching stable coins and so on and so forth. And like, was this what we wanted when we built Ethereum? Not that my opinion matters, I don't think. I work on a credit facilitation protocol. It worked like, it's everything for everyone. What would need to happen for everyone to go, Ethereum has failed? Bit of a doomer talk. But we'll make some jokes out of it while we go. I don't want Ethereum to fail. It's my the work of like my life. I love doing it. But it does seem funny that when like you first get into Ethereum, if you're in it for the tech, that you go like, oh, here's the the global computer, this godhead, and we're like, BlackRock's in, let's go, wag me. Not that that's a bad thing. I just sometimes find myself going a little bit of a paradox when I work in Ethereum. And so I'm going to talk about a couple of things. Some of them are like probably likely, some of them are quite outlandish. Just rate them, like how funny would it be if they happen? How likely are they to happen? Like what would the impact be downstream? And yes, like I said, this is not going to be a professional talk. So I guess the first one is like, what happens if one of our homebrews fails, Lido or Rocket Pool or anything of the sort? Because when who was around for the merge? I imagine most people in the room, right? I was sitting at like midnight, 2 a.m. watching it happen, and I popped a bottle. And this was meant to be the whole like, yes, it's no longer an ASIC thing. We own our own network. It's we've taken some control back in like a smaller scale. The way I phrased it is, from the savage mining rigs to the noble home staker. But 32 ETH is the validator stake, and I can't afford that. So it feels like it's out of reach. So we've seen these like solutions come in to fill the gap. So you have like Rocket Pool now with its mini pools, so you can do like 4 ETH, which is great. That's more in reach. But what if? What if something goes wrong? What if staked ETH or wrapped ETH, like something goes wonky? And Vitalik was speaking, I think 2 or 3 days ago about how we want to start driving back down to like 1 ETH as a stake. Like that's great that we should get there. We probably won't, or if we do, it'll be 2040. But until it happens, like if something goes wrong in the interim, then the likely net impact is that we see like the exchanges that currently have like a large minority of the network just like aggregate more. And that becomes dangerous. We're in a sunny uplet. We think everything's going to be a little bit better regulatory-wise. Hopefully we'll get some clarity, but that might flip on a dime pretty soon. And then we end up like with a stranglehold in reach. Or we end up, with like Larry Fink ends up in control of everything and we've just created eCoin. Likelihood, I don't think, like these things have been around for years now. I don't think anything's going to happen. I realize I have a reputation for saying these things and then they do, so I'm sorry. Don't laugh too much, please. I don't want to be here next year and be like that this was the turning point. If something did happen, given that, like I think Lido has what, 27.7%? That's quite an autistic thing to, I think, and then say the percentage. I think Ethereum would remain safe at its core, but it wouldn't be fun. You know, like we've watched years and years of getting dunked on for proof of stake networks, and this would have kind of proved the point that we can't be trusted to kind of guard our own assets or our network. This is what happens when you introduce programmability, you get it wrong. Tether getting sanctioned would probably be another one. Like, stable coins are such a weird thing because they're now like, it's everything and nothing. Like, it's the most boring use case for crypto, and also I think like probably one of the most important. I've spoken about this in Paris last year, I think it was, saying that, you know, like the soft power in Ethereum now belongs to stablecoin issuers. That's where the liquidity goes. We pair everything off against Tether, Circle, and so on. And, you know, to a lesser degree, RAI, DAI, and so on. Sorry, USDS now, or back. And it's very easy to imagine a situation where, like, you finding, I mean, I don't know how much Tether has of, like, the US bond market now, where things get a bit hostile, and it's actually like, no, we consider you kind of like, we're no longer simpatico with you holding this much collateral and just making it difficult to redeem. What happens then? Like, we're not getting OFACs at scale for ever having Tether in our wallets, but like, what if you kind of like grip onto something and like make it harder? And like, I don't think this is gonna happen as well, but like, it's nice to kind of as a what if. I think there's one that I'll talk about later, which I think is probably more like likely, and that will become a bit contentious. Like, but yeah, if Tether's sanctioned, if Paolo finally gets like, you know, sent to Gitmo, that's it, we're done. Like, we are back to 2016, it's over. We talk about how, like, you know, if there's going to be a US regulatory compliant stablecoin, it would be Circle, whereas Tether's, you know, please maintain the peg no matter how illegal it may be, thank you, sir. I don't think this would be great, but like, yeah, Bitfinex would have like a wonderful time out of it. You know, like the Tether truth is finally unleashed, going, that was it. Or I think this is the most likely one that's going to happen, and I think weirdly enough, like the beam chain stuff might factor into this, depending on like how things go. Maybe Lido fails, maybe Rocket Pool fails, maybe Tether is sanctioned. Something happens, like yeah, DevOps comes back and actually goes, right, this time I'm coming for the EF wallet, and that. I did mention the other day that like I started on Ethereum the day that happened, that the parity wallet was bricked, and a bunch of people thought I'd like told on myself. This is my announcement that I am DevOps 199. Actually, yeah, Gavin Wood coming down the corridor. Something happens, and we need to wind things back. This is going to be less hands up. Who was around for the DAO hard fork? Enough. All of you could have your hands up. I wouldn't know. I can't see anything. It would be extremely hard, I think, to coordinate that now. Like, we voted on it back in the day, and it was like, what, 5% of all Ether that was around, like, voted for the fork to happen? And that was, like, basically nothing. Like, no quorum, but we were like, well, what other option do we have? You should read The Cryptopians by Laura Shin if you want, like, a deep dive into some of this stuff. It's very good. I don't think we could do this again, and more important, like, in a way that's not centralized. This comes back to, like, you know, what if you end up like relying on Coinbase or Kraken or like whatever to facilitate the fork? And it does seem that we have accepted as canon that this is not happening anymore. Like, the fact that EIP 999 is just there, like, no one's going to be upgrading the contract code to like return the funds to parity or make them accessible again. We're finished with hard forks. But what if? It is not for me to sit here and Doctor Strange to you the various ways that we could finally like have a schism, but I think it's probably more likely than not in the medium term. And back in the day, it was an ideological thing. It was very much like, no, this is what Ethereum was meant to be, and that became Ethereum Classic. We have the Ethereum that we use now, which won, crowned by the social layer. Not happening now. It's wherever Circle and Tether go. And that's interesting, like, and what happens if they go to different places? Because if you remember, like, when ETH POW at the merge, like, that was meant to be the fated, like, this is the version that exists, and that collapsed, and like Pulse Chain was another one. Shout out Richard Hart, wherever you are. I do consider this inevitable. And it could be something really minor that just gets like blown out of all proportion, and like becomes like our Martin Luther moment, like the on the door. It could be EOF bytecode implementation. It could be the beam chain. It could be anything. I think Ethereum would like, this room would halve in size. We'd have smaller Devcons based on like which camp we fell into. But I think we'd be fine. I mean, Hudson, you arranged the first DevCons like after the fork, didn't you?
Yeah, that was really difficult.
Do you want to do it again?
No, that's okay.
Yeah, like we made plenty of jokes about ETH POW, and a bunch of people like got really into like doing some like interesting ARBs, and you started seeing things like, oh, Aave's deployment there has collapsed, and that was very funny, but no one was ever like tying any value to it. Now that, but like a meaningful stablecoin is on each chain, and that gets weird quick. Is my ticker working? Yes. Base level privacy. I want this. I think most people want this. We've just listened to a talk about like, passkeys and using zero knowledge. I think Aztec Connect should still be around. It's like it got sunsetted. Its final one was like January this year that it stopped running its sequencer. I want it to come back. More importantly, I want it to be in Ethereum. I think we want the optionality of being able to obfuscate things. The who and the what. So, Coinbase have just come out with their schema for confidential ERC20 that uses fully homomorphic encryption to be like, okay, we can hide the who and we can hide the how much. I think that's cool. And I think that's going to get scaled up more like now into kind of like Zcash-y type looking things, but plus the EVM for programmability. I think when you're talking about like hedge funds and what have you, or just large entities that are trying to do stuff on chain. Like 7 years ago, I was doing something with like Hyperledger, trying to do reinsurance at a bank, and like that didn't go anywhere. But that was the kind of thing that was like, well, how much can you hide on chain, like amounts or what have you, which was fun. But like you don't want all of that to be public, and I think it would probably make it really interesting for some institutions to bring more stuff onto Ethereum because they could kind of like access some stuff like, debt issuance or what have you. But some stuff they just kind of want to move in the shadows. And this works really well until you've ever audited a contract or tried to analyze something that's gone wrong, and then you're like, oh, I can't read any logs. I don't know like what the call data was. I don't know what's happened. And so I think this would be fine right up until the moment where like you do have a $250 million hack that like leaves BlackRock out to dry. And then we're like, oh, actually, it turns out this sucks. We don't like this anymore, even though it's like post-facto, like repair of damage. I think confidential ERC20 is going to be one of a line of like, we've seen ERC20R, the reversible version. No one's ever really done anything with it. I think this is going to be in the same kind of schema. Interesting stuff because ERC20 is what it is. But we're never getting base level privacy in Ethereum itself, dog. I'd like it. I want it to happen. I would like to have a Zcash type thing where I could like write by my Solidity contracts. But this is because of who I am, not because like I'm the wider network. A better Ethereum. I really didn't know how that was gonna go. Solana's, it's lame and cliche to dunk on Mert and Toli and all of the others for like, Solana will shut down. Like, we're done. Solana's good. But what happens if, like, over the next 4, 8, 10 years, by the time that the beam chain happens, wow, I can do off the cuff. What happens if it still is appealing to retail and the institutions that are trying to target them say, fantastic, this is what's, this is where we're going to go, and we just end up kind of spinning our wheels. Because like, what if Bitcoin L2s work? Cardano becomes its like layer for that, and Plutus becomes the language that we all get good at. Well, like, there are other languages than Plutus. I'm showing my age here. Does that pop our tires? Like, we work now. Ethereum is top dog for this kind of thing, but we might not always be. We can't presume that we're always going to be like the successful networks like with the L2 situation. Everyone saw this post, right? 2 days ago. And I was like, oh, shit post or real thing. And then I finished my slides, and I was like, fantastic, I'm done. I'm going for a drink. And then Justin went on stage and was like, the beam chain. I'm like, oh, okay, right, now I have to read all about it. What if another network does this first? Unlikely. I think that unlikely that something like this would happen. But like, what if we get a better Ethereum? I think this is going to happen. And I think it's going to happen before I turn 50. Bitcoin was top dog, and it was the thing we had, and then, until it wasn't, right? And then Ethereum turned up, and like Ethereum might not always be. I'm quoting Tim Clancy here, by the way. The grand network, a godhead unto itself, the fount of a glorious future, might not always be. it's a skill issue if that happens. Like we'd see, like, it would be completely on us. Like, not an attack vector. This isn't like a bad thing. It's just like our experiment has failed. Can you imagine bankless for the next 2 years? I love the bankless guys. I actually enjoy them, but can you imagine? What happens if we become Cosmos? And I say this with love to some of the Cosmos devs I know. The fact that we are responsible for Ethereum is both the best thing about it and the worst, because we are pretty stupid. On aggregate, we all are. I am, you are. And yeah, have you ever read the Cosmos governance forums? Not great. Like, what if that spread to Ethereum? Everyone listens and respects Vitalik. He guides us through his thought leadership, which he's getting better at. What happens when he leaves? Who takes over? You know, who at the EF becomes like the new god? But we need someone to focus on. It seems weird because that's like not how Ethereum should be, but people want to look up to people to take over the reins. And I don't think we really have viable candidates for that yet. This is like Cosmos focuses on being multi-chain, whereas Ethereum's roll-up centric map is like, we have like, may 1,000 L2s bloom. I think we're less likely to kind of fall into this chasm because we have mainnet to defend. But yeah, if that did happen, like you could just imagine bickering of like, you know, how do you do X, how do you Y? We're going to start seeing it over the next years, but like, you know, as the pilling starts, there's a phase of the beam chain, it's going to happen. Like, we're going to start quibbling over stuff. Some will get implemented, some will change in spec, and then we'll just argue for years. That's not a bad thing, because this is slow. It has to be slow. We can't move fast and break things when it comes to Ethereum itself. And it would be really frustrating to watch. I have 3 minutes left. I think coming back to like what happens if we kind of just get muddled in ourselves is, because we're human, it's very easy to psyop ourselves or be intentionally psyoped. If Ethereum becomes a $1 trillion network, it's worth doing a 5-year long con to just kind of like muddle the, who was it? Was it me that did the whole, am I a cool dev? Yeah. To just kind of like infiltrate, to kind of like muddy the waters, to run the CIA handbook of, you know, just like make everything by committee, run it back, take all extremes. I wouldn't like to see it happen, but I think it could. I think we're like vulnerable to it. I've got 2 minutes left. I hadn't timed this. I just wrote them and said like, I'll turn up. But I think it's really important to like say, again, Devcon and all of the Ethereum conferences are wonderful, and it's really nice to see everyone here, people old and new. I think it behooves us in the next few years, as things start getting frothy, to just be aware of things that are coming down the pipes that might be a risk to Ethereum. And it feels like, to everyone sitting here, like maybe if I'm not Justin Drake, it feels like I don't have much impact on Ethereum, but you do. As we've seen with the Bangkok traffic, you're not stuck in traffic, you are traffic. All of you are Ethereum. I am, you are. Not Hudson. But that's the point, is that it is a global network of us. You know, this is part of the drive towards the home staking, with like our control, our network, our decision. And we're getting there. And I think you should all be proud of the things that like, we have built as a collective. And in lieu of doing any cringing happy birthday singing, I would like you to just pull out your phones and just tweet, I am Ethereum. That would be nice, I think, just to kind of like psyop a little moment. Timed that pretty well, 1 minute to go. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Laurence. It was.
I would have bet $10,000 that was up there, and I would have made bank.
Okay, it's a really fun presentation, so no wonder there's a very fun Q&A as well, for sure. So first one is it vegan?
I hate all of you.
Okay, next one should be fun. Docs all your alts right now for attendees only. Yeah, it's just like 2 of us here on stage. Nobody else would know.
Buy me a drink later. Oh, God, I can't engage with these questions. I'm not optimizing putting Catgirl Sent on chain. I am 36. Please stop.
Okay, so this is a bit more serious one.
Yep.
Okay. Ethereum is a technocracy that so far hasn't been heavily influenced by BlackRock, etc.
I think that's true. I think, you know, we find kind of the blobs that stand apart in the Ethereum Foundation and kind of like the people that we would consider, like that we would mark as being Ethereum. do stand apart from like the institutions that like we talk to and engage with. You're seeing that like we start almost like violently rejecting at the social layer even the perception of conflicts of interest. We saw this recently with Eigenlayer, which I was actually like, I think this is fine-ish, but I can see why that ended up unraveling the way it did. I think we're fine. I don't know, like again, it could be that we start like, oh, it's not gonna happen. All of Visa start settling on chain. Then they have like a motivated interest to be like, we now want control. If you haven't watched Mr. Robot, go watch the eCoin scene. I think that's quite telling.
Okay. The next question, there's actually two questions a bit connected to each other. Vitalik leaves, and for some reason, you're in charge of anointing the next thought leader. Gun to your head, who do you think takes over? And there's one that asks, would you want it to be you? Would you replace Vitalik if asked to serve?
Anyone who has to tell someone that they're a king is no king, right? I think it wouldn't be like, I would choose. Absolutely not. A terrifying idea. Who would take over? I'd like to see some of the people at the consensus layer, I think, kick up, but I'm not going to name anyone. And I think that's also weird because we end up kind of like saying it's the technical good communicators, which are diamonds that show up. And like, they're normally quiet because they're just getting stuff done. Like, Vitalik's still quite uncomfortable, I think, like being the face of Ethereum. Like, he's great at doing it and he talks so much, but like, I wouldn't want to be him. I respect him and I do not envy him. I don't know, it's Hudson, that's it. Congrats, you're in charge.
Okay. One sec, sorry, I'm viewing from my phone. Does Ethereum need a new champion, particularly for privacy?
We have champions for privacy on chain. JT Riley, everyone working at Aztec, everyone that's worked in ZK proofs, they're around. You just maybe know or don't know who they are. Right? Like, they exist already.
All right. You seem to believe that there is a room for institutions and Anon. Cypherpunks both. Isn't that very argument for success in network hardness?
Yes. I've argued before in talks that I think like it's fine for us to have these two worlds, but they will inevitably start clashing, I think, as, you know, kind of Ethereum is in and of itself inherently political. Assets become money, become power. And there will start to be arguments about like who is in control. Paul Dylan Ennis has given some really interesting talks about regen versus degen culture, and these kind of like cliques that like regens were in the minority for a while because that's what everyone was doing, was just pumping things on like in crypto. Say by the by for Jonathan. How to get accepted to West Ham? 3 Ether, please, everyone.
Okay, how do you see privacy going forward? I get your resistance on L1, but what about L2s? Would this facilitate crime?
I liked Aztec Connect. I want to use DarkFi when it comes out. I think that they're all fantastic. I think it's so hard. I can argue both ways quite easily about the how and the why you wouldn't want privacy on chain, especially when it comes to like arbitrary programmability, because like every contract becomes a tornado, and that's really tricky. But at the same time, it's very much like I want to do these things because like I want to exert myself sovereignty.
And if we have still a few seconds. Do you see a scission between pragmatic vision versus cyberpunk ethos?
I don't know how to answer this. I don't know what a pragmatic vision for Ethereum looks like, because I can only stand here and speak with my biases, and I like to think that I'm a cypherpunk, but maybe I'm a bad one. I don't know like what practice looks like. Is it single slot finality? Is it like more value on the chain? Is it more stable coins? I couldn't tell you.